Welcome back to the Puma Podcast. I'm Tory.
Hey, and I'm Puma.
And on this podcast, we talk about Jesus, life, and everything in between. And guys, I'm so glad you guys are back. We are continuing our little series on how to live wisely in a foolish world. And this is our third part of that. And, I'm really excited because I have a lot of good feedback from even just the first episode. And I have a friend, and he had said that he had just listened to the audio version of Proverbs and just so excited to grow with us and learn with us. So thank you guys for coming alongside us. And I'm learning a lot too. And today we have a really very practical, Proverbs is practical, but I think this particular episode is going to be super practical and convicting for me, even just going over with it with Puma. So Puma, any teaser before we dive into this?
Teaser. Well, boy, that's, I would say that we live in a foolish world full of opinions. And reading through Proverbs, there was a verse that kind of grabbed my jugular. And when I read it, it's amazing. You can read so many verses in Proverbs and like people and situations just kind of pop out. But as I was reading through this year over and over again, one of the verses in Proverbs 18:2 that I read, it says that a fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but delights in airing their own opinions. And when I read that, all I could think of was social media.
Yeah.
I mean, the world that we live in is just one opinion after another. And, it's like, well, which one should I listen to? Which one should I believe? And just kind of looking at that verse, I was like, wow, a fool takes no pleasure in understanding. The path of foolishness has no desire or doesn't take pleasure, does not enjoy understanding or seeking understanding. Instead, what they enjoy is just sharing whatever thoughts pop into their head.
Yeah.
Whether that be people in government, in education, social media, even in our churches. Talk to someone and things just pop into their head and they just share it.
Yeah. Well, I know some of the stories you shared with me, and we're going to talk about them in this podcast, but yeah, from beer and drag queens and demons, and we have a lot to talk about when it comes to our opinions.
Yeah. Well, maybe when I talk about all those things, but the things just this past week, hops for hospice, have a beer and wine tasting event, and proceeds go to hospice. Is that a good, wise thing?
It depends on the opinions of those you ask, I guess.
Yeah, there was a place up in Minnesota this past month, and they had a Saturday event for kids where kids can learn how to summon their own personal demon. Wow. And it's like, you hear that and you think that's got to be like Babylon Bee or some kind of, that can't be real.
Interesting.
Or just all kinds of stuff going on out there, out there in the world. I think most of us would agree that we live in a world full of opinions, and it's so hard to sift through the opinions to get to truth and get to reality, get to wisdom. And so anyway, that Proverbs 18:2 is kind of the launching point for us today.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Hey, let's dive into this podcast. All right. So Puma, can you actually just share a little bit more? I know you alluded to it a bit in the intro, but yeah, there are lots of opinions out there. Lots of people have great ideas for our lives, and it's not just our relatives or in-laws. But yeah, there's lots of different ideas and opinions. And as people who want to live wisely, as people that really do want to honor God, when it comes to someone's opinion, I mean, I don't want to be a fool. I don't want to just air my own opinion. And yet you mentioned there are these groups that are teaching children how to summon their own demon. What is that? What was that? Yeah,
well, it was just a museum, maybe a library up in Minnesota. I can't remember exactly which, but I just saw the headline this past month and the article there. And yeah, it was just, that's what they were doing. They were basically through a bunch of, looking at some old ancient ideas. If I got the paper here with me. Yeah, it says families are invited to create a vessel to trap the demon that knows them best.
Ugh.
On the website, it said demons have a bad reputation, but maybe we're just not very good at getting to know them.
Wow. So it's almost like it's not that they're bad. We just don't have enough information on who they are.
Do you have a demon that creeps into your thoughts, et cetera, et cetera? Anyway, it's these kinds of things that we see out there, and they're happening more and more. But like on social media, people are sharing stuff all the time. You get a thought.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be where you would give thought to the words that you say, or the thought to the words that you write. But today we just type out a text or a message or a post, and we hit send before really thinking through that. And so, but what struck me about Proverbs 18:2 is that the path of foolishness does not find pleasure in understanding. And I don't know that we understand what understanding is in Proverbs. And so I want us to explore that a little bit. That a foolish person really finds pleasure only in sharing kind of the utterances of their heart, or just the things that pop into their head. In other words, people speak before thinking. I don't know if you've noticed that at all, but that seems to be kind of the spirit of the age.
Well, I'm also a little bit guilty of that.
We all are. I mean, we all are to one degree or another, but it seems like people arguing with each other, but they're not seeking to understand each other.
Right.
They're not listening. They're not helping move the conversation forward. You see this all the time. And, so people post things, on social media, and then they go to apply for a job, and the employer looks at their social media, the Facebook or whatever, and the person doesn't get hired because of the things that they put on social media. And then they get mad at the employer. Like, how dare you, not hire me because of whatever. So we don't give thought. We just share our thoughts and opinions almost indiscriminately today. And that's almost encouraged in our culture, just to share whatever comes into your mind.
Well, it's not just to share our opinion. It's like we have a right to get upset and offended. I know that I'll just say one of my many neighbors, I live in a condo right now, but one of them she's a lesbian, and she knows I'm a pastor. And so she was talking to me about, just her and a girlfriend living with her over COVID and all that stuff. And she goes, yeah, but you wouldn't understand because you're a pastor. I'm like, what do you mean? And she actually brought up this is back when it was really like a big hot topic, but different drag queens going teaching children in schools and all like progressive, and you're more old fashioned. You were probably raised by, conservative, evil parents and stuff. And she was not just sharing her opinion, but she was offended that I didn't agree with her opinion. And I was a bad guy. I hadn't said anything. She just knew I was a pastor. And I was just surprised that because I didn't agree with her opinion, she had a right to be mad at me. Regardless, she didn't want to hear my opinion. She just assumed it. But then in sharing her opinion, she felt justified because I didn't agree with her own.
What's interesting is she shares her opinion with you, and then she shares her opinion of you and does not desire to understand you, has no idea what you know and what you think or, your experience.
Right. Well, I felt like I couldn't even talk to her. At that point, she was already mad. And I hadn't said anything other than, I'm still at the church. And it's amazing how I feel like I could not even I want to understand her, but I couldn't even talk to her at that point. It was already offended.
Well, and that's one of the fallouts of everyone just sharing their own opinion without understanding, no desire to understand. Conversation ends.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's no discussion.
There's no discussion. Conversation ends. And this is what we experience in our culture today. And there's nothing wrong with having an opinion. I mean, we all have an opinion. It's nothing wrong with having an opinion about something. But when I have no desire to understand, just to share my opinion, that's where the path of foolishness begins there in Proverbs 18:2.
Yeah. Well, how can Proverbs help us in this, as we explore this concept of our opinions and understanding? Yeah, I know you mentioned Proverbs 2, off screen, off mic. And I was curious of what you thought Solomon, even as he starts kind of the book of Proverbs, what he says about this concept.
Yeah. Well, there are three words that you'll see over and over again when you read the book of Proverbs. One is knowledge, one is understanding, and the other is wisdom. And sometimes it seems like they're almost interchangeable terms. So you have a lot of verses like Proverbs 4:7, wisdom is supreme, therefore get wisdom, though it cost all you have, get understanding. Or like Proverbs 16:16 says, how much better to get wisdom than gold, to choose understanding rather than silver. You have Proverbs 23:23, buy the truth and do not sell it, get wisdom, discipline, and understanding. Proverbs 3:13, blessed is the man who finds wisdom, the man who gains understanding. And so you have a lot of verses where you have these words, in the verse, and they're kind of nuanced, almost kind of like leaning up against each other. But knowledge, understanding, and wisdom are three distinct concepts. And what I find interesting is people typically want knowledge. So a question comes up, you don't know the answer. Where do you go?
I Google it.
You Google
YouTube
it. Ask Siri.
You're right.
Right. Yeah. And why do we do that? Because we want to know. We want to know. And what is it that we want to know? We want to get information on to the question.
Right. Yeah, we seek our source of information via internet usually.
Yeah. So I saw something in Celsius instead of Fahrenheit, and so what I do? Yeah, I Googled it. What's the conversion rate? Right.
Right.
It just, we are a culture of information. In fact, we have so much information, we almost gag on it.
True.
I mean, so much information that it's almost useless. We know a lot of facts about things.
We're overloaded.
It's not practical. But people generally want to know. If they have a question, they go get information, right? They'll, knowledge. One of the things that we had talked about, I think, in a previous podcast is that knowledge in Proverbs, generally speaking, is knowledge of who God is, his character, his nature, knowing God, knowing God's perspective on man, knowing God's perspective on creation, knowing God's perspective on truth, on righteousness, and all these concepts. So that general category of knowledge. But people, want knowledge. They want knowledge about creation. They want knowledge about relationships. We want information about those things. So you have knowledge as one. The other, probably most people listening, and if you're listening to this on, podcasts on Proverbs, is probably because you want wisdom.
Yeah, right.
That's because you want wisdom. You want to know, how does it work? What's the result? How is it practically gonna work itself out, affect my life?
Yep.
Right. Yeah. So we want to know those things, and so I get information, knowledge, so that I can get a result, and that's typically how we think.
Sure.
We want information so we can get a result.
I do this, I get this.
Yeah, I do this, I get this. So you got knowledge, you got wisdom. What's missing so often is what's in the middle, or what I would say is sort of the glue between knowledge and wisdom, and that is understanding.
What do you mean by that?
Well, let me, like a story. There's a story of a man on a train. He's on the train. He's got a couple little kids, and the kids are running up and down, the car, and they're kind of messing up the papers of people, reading the newspaper and people reading books, people just minding their own business. And so the man sitting across from this father, says the guy, why don't you control your kids? They're messing up the whole train, they're messing up everybody. And the father says, oh, well, I'm sorry. I didn't realize they were running up and down the train. See, their mother died and we're just coming home from her funeral. So now the man sitting across from the father, now he has a little bit of understanding.
Yeah.
And that understanding changes how he interprets the information, and also changes how he's going to apply that information to his time in the car. You see, understanding clarifies the information, or puts it in the right category. See, without knowing the context, another word we could say context, without knowing the context, this man sitting across from the father is being really critical and judgmental. He sees the kids running up and down, so that information is there, but he doesn't understand what's going on with what he's seeing and experiencing.
Right.
And so he makes an assumption, or makes a judgment about the father being a bad father or whatever. And so he then applies, quote unquote, wisdom to what he thinks is the right information, saying this father's a bad father, he should control his kids.
Yeah, we are quick to judge what we don't understand.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. We live in a world that is very much quick to judge and not quick to understand. So that's what Proverbs 18:2 says. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but delights in airing their own opinions. But then we get mad at people when people question our opinions.
That's true, yeah.
All right? We get mad at people when they make a judgment on us. And see, we all experience the pain or pings when somebody doesn't understand me.
Right, yeah. We feel less valued, not as important, perhaps even attacked.
Right.
When someone assumes or judges us without knowing the context or the meaning behind our actions.
Yeah. So, so that's not like at a personal level. When it comes to, as we've talked about, the path of wisdom and the path of foolishness, everybody's walking down one of two paths. I am pursuing, wisdom, and I'm pursuing I'm walking down the path of foolishness. Yeah. The key really is, do I really seek to understand? And so Solomon in Proverbs 2, this is kind of what he talked about. And gaining understanding is conditional. So do you know what I mean by conditional?
Conditional, that there's a cause and effect. If I want wisdom or understanding or knowledge, if I do A, then I will get B.
Right.
So it's a conditional clause there.
Yeah, it's conditional. And we think that the condition is if I just gather information, then I will have wisdom.
Right. Yeah, that's the assumption.
Yeah, that's the assumption. That's the assumption people work on. What's missing there is understanding. So like Proverbs 2, Solomon, again, talking to his adult children, we had talked about that.
Right.
He said, my son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you. So that word if.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it's not just gathering information, but you need to store it. We need information, we need knowledge, but it's not knowledge that is just passing. It's knowledge that I'm storing up. In fact, the idea of storing it up is kind of a savings account, right? I gather knowledge, I gather information, maybe not even to use right away, but I'm gathering it, I'm storing it up.
For later.
Yeah. Verse 2, he says, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understand it. So it's not just gaining information, but I'm really desiring to understand that information. I want to ask questions of that information. I want to kind of interrogate it, let's say.
You want to know the purpose, the meaning, the intent behind an action, and even an effect. Like why does this do the way the thing, or why this person is the way they are?
Yeah. And he says, verse 3, and if you call out for insight and you cry aloud for understanding, which is interesting. You don't cry aloud for knowledge, you cry aloud for understanding. In other words, he says, son, I'm going to share some things with you, but I don't want you just to hold on to the things that I'm saying to you. I want you to yearn to understand what I'm sharing with you. I want you to have insight into it. I want you to see between the lines of what I'm saying to you. I want you to see the implications. I want you to see how things are connected to each other. It's so easy in our world to get hung up on words, specific words, and people do this all the time. They hear a word and they latch onto a word and they're not trying to understand it, but they kind of latch on and they kind of launch into an idea or an opinion without really grasping the intent of that word. Verse 4, and he says, and if you look for it as for silver and search for it as for hidden treasure. When you really want something really, really bad, you are willing to spend some time and effort. See, understanding requires effort.
Right.
And we live in a world that really doesn't want to put a lot of effort into understand. We don't want to do the hard work.
Right. Understanding, like you said, takes time, and that's costly. That takes effort, energy, and a commitment. It'll cost you, and that's oftentimes a price you don't want to pay. Yeah.
Well, it costs you time, costs you energy, costs you money. And we want the microwave wisdom package.
That's
right?
true.
We want the microwave information. We want the Cliff Notes or Mono Notes to a novel. At least that was my experience.
Right. Read the back page and get the highlights.
Right. Yeah. So, my son, if you accept my words and store my commands within you, if you turn your ear to wisdom and apply your heart to understanding, and if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as for silver and search for it as for a hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom, and from his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. So when Proverbs is talking about living wisely, it begins, we looked at Proverbs 1:7, the knowledge of God, and in Proverbs 9:10, that the fear of the Lord is beginning wisdom, knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. That the foundational information or knowledge is the knowledge of God, who he is and what he is about. And to understand who God is and understand what God is about, to desire to understand why God does what he does. Why did God create? Why are we relational beings? Why is there a right and wrong? He goes on to say, then you will understand what is right and just and fair, every good path, for wisdom will enter your heart. You see, we live in a world that is full of opinions, but a world that has no desire or no joy in trying to understand. And I would put even qualifier, a desire to understand God, his heart and his mind.
Yeah, we're very mentally lazy. And I know something you mentioned when I was a teen, which in Jesus, says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. I remember you made a point, like we we don't always love God with our mind. And what does that even mean? And I think this is part of it. I think to seek not just to, like you said, the microwave wisdom, but to really apply ourselves to understand, to put effort into understanding the full picture, the context, the meaning, the heart behind whatever it is we're trying to learn. That takes mental energy and potentially even emotional energy. And that's the part we want to skip out. But you're right. That's the glue.
So some of the things we talked about at the beginning, hops for hospice. It's an idea, it's an opinion out there. But to understand, what does God think about that? Or drag story hour. That's an opinion out there. What does God think about that? To understand God's heart behind these things. And so to pursue wisdom is to get to know the heart of God and to seek to understand God's perspective. Because when we begin to seek out God's perspective, then we will begin to understand. Then we'll begin to know what is right or what is true or what is just or what is fair. Without understanding even a fraction of God's heart, we're never going to really know, the whys. It's just going to be opinions, and then we're going to try to work it out, and we're going to have all kinds of fallout.
Right. Yeah, so what's a good AQ, a good application question for us this podcast?
Yeah, one application question for myself even is today, do I really desire to share my thoughts and opinions, or do I desire to really understand the heart of God? Which brings me more pleasure? You see, we are always seeking out pleasure. We're always seeking, joy and happiness. Do I find pleasure in just posting on social media or talking and having people listen to me?
Right.
Do I find pleasure in seeking out the heart of God and getting to understand God and who he is and what he's all about? Yeah. See, that's a question I have to ask myself, because honestly, it's a lot easier just to speak whatever and have people listen to me. It's a lot harder to try to really understand God and spend time with him, getting to know him.
Right. And that's true of any relationship. Like if you're married, do you want to just speak your opinion, or are you trying to understand theirs? But yeah, especially with the most important relationship with Jesus, with God, do we read different information, or do we read to understand his heart, his personality, his character? Like, what does God actually like? What actually pleases him? The verses, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. That concept of, do we understand, not just know facts, do we understand the heart of God? It's really good. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Puma. And thank you guys too for listening to us. It's just, what a fun journey just to join for me personally with my father, but even just with you guys to come alongside and listen. We so appreciate you guys joining us. And if you have any questions or thoughts or comments, please feel free to reach out to us at thepumapodcast@gmail.com. And if you have any friends that might benefit, or you maybe want to discuss this with them and can get their opinions, right? Feel free to share this podcast with others. And hey, we'll see you next week, Fridays at 10:10.
Yep, bye-bye.
Bye.